and welcome to Bespoke Unit. I'm CP, and in this video I'll be reviewing Bollinger Cuvée Spéciale. Bollinger was founded by Hennequin de Villermont, Paul Renaudin and Jacques Bollinger in 1829. Although it earned a Royal Warrant in 1884, it became famous largely thanks to Emily Lord de Lauriston-Boubert, who married Jacques Bollinger, the original Jacques' grandson, and became known as Lily Bollinger. When Jacques died, Lily took over and expanded the brand, but also travelled around the world to promote it. She's famous for saying, "I drink it when I'm happy and when I'm sad. Sometimes I drink it when I'm alone. When I have company, I consider it to be obligatory. I trifle with it when I'm not hungry, and I drink it when I am. Otherwise, I never touch it, unless I'm thirsty." Today, Bollinger is one of the few remaining independent champagne houses. It owns 160 hectares of vines, which caters to 60% of its production, with some from Grand and Premier Cru plots. The still wine is fermented in a combination of oak barrels and stainless steel tanks. The champagne is then bottle-aged for at least 30 months, which is double the legal minimum, and after the dosage and corking, the wines are aged for an additional 3 months to rest them. With that all being said, I guess it's nearly time to try this. It's been sitting out from the fridge since I started the video, which means that it should be around the 10 degrees that I would recommend for drinking it. If you're curious about the composition of this champagne. So we're looking at a sugar content of between 8 to 9 grams of sugar, which makes it a brut. It is a cru style, despite using some Premier and Grand Cru grapes in there. It's a tradition blend style, and it contains 60% Pinot Noir, 25% Pinot Meunier, and 15% Chardonnay. And before I go any further, just so you know, I've been reviewing this champagne using the Bespoke Unit Champagne Sheet, a quantifiable review formula that we designed. If you're in a hurry, you just simply go into the description below and you'll see the full written review where you can see this already done, and I'll give you some pairing suggestions and tell you how we rate it. Otherwise, let's go on. So first of all, in terms of the Robe and the Perlage, when the bottle is opened, it's going to be very, very lightly. They become a little more lazy with time, which is quite normal, but you're looking at quite a lively perlage, or bubbles, would we say. And in terms of hue, we're looking at mid-gold. It's not going to be as pale as straw, but it's not really got the age yet to be gold, if you know what I mean. Next is the nose and the bouquet. So this is quite an intense champagne, especially if you compare it to the main flagship cuvées from other major houses. Although it's also quite intricate and complex, there's a good diversity of notes. It's quite vivid as well in flavour. You're looking at, on the first nose, green apples and butter. And on the second nose, if you persist and you keep smelling, it's going to start to feel more like baked apples, so you sort of buttery apple, with a hint of vanilla as well. There are going to be some notes that you will taste later on, although it seems to be quite coy at this stage. So I guess the next thing is to give it a taste. So just like the bouquet, you're looking at, so first of all, as you can see, I'm still salivating, I'm struggling to speak. That's because of a very high acidity. Indeed, Bollinger Cuvée Spéciale is meant to be one of the most acidic of the major French champagne houses. So if you prefer them sweet, this is definitely not for you. It's also very yeasty, and there's a rich intensity and flavour, just like on the nose. The texture is not light. It's going to be quite balanced, but you're not yet on the velvety side of a very, very mature champagne. This is being aged indeed for, you're looking at about 30 months, so less than 3 years in aging overall. Nevertheless, there is some complexity, which does show some maturity. And in the opening, you're going to experience largely these green fruit notes, a combination, an accord, I'd say, of Conference pear and Granny Smith apple. But there's also just a hint of bittersweet citrus, which adds a little bit more acidity at the back of the tongue. Then moving into the heart, the apple and pear accord basically turn into sort of baked apple, as we noticed in the second nose earlier. There's also a hint of butter, which is probably derived from the baked apple itself. This is quite oily on the tongue. You do notice a change in the texture, as well as a hint of hazelnut. You could basically compare the heart to a tart apple crumble. Then eventually moving on to the finish of the champagne, and well, I'm here, I might as well have another sample. So moving on to the finish of the champagne, it's going to be quite yeasty. You still get a couple of elements of that fruit, but you also get the yeasty brioche, a little bit of minerality from some chalk, as well as just an essence of vanilla that basically adds some substance to the brioche note. When it comes to the overall experience of buying Bollinger, as you can see, this is quite an ornate display. It's quite grandiose. The box is beautiful with its cream and red and gold. It's very nicely designed. It's bold, just like the champagne, but it still retains some elegance. Again, just like the champagne. The plaque is equally regal. I wouldn't say it's ornate. We're looking at more kind of an imperial presentation with a bold shield in black with 1829, the house name and ear, which is where it's made. As for the cork hasn't retained its original shape. It hasn't puffed out as you would want from a high quality cork. That being said, it has been sitting probably in this bottle for quite a while. So I'd say that it hasn't, it's been on the shelf for a while, but then again, they're also rested for 3 months after they've been corked. It should expand eventually to a relatively cylindrical shape, but that hasn't happened just yet. Otherwise, it's a good quality cork, nice and firm, and it does bounce back. But here it does feel a little bit stiff. As for the occasion, Bollinger is a very versatile champagne that you can drink for a variety of occasions. It's going to be more of a champagne that you would accompany with a meal or as a starter. This isn't something that I would consider really as just an apéro, although that is perfectly possible, as Lily Bollinger said herself. This is something that she would drink when she's thirsty, when she isn't, etc., as I said earlier. So it is versatile. It can be certainly enjoyed at special occasions. Indeed, this is probably one of the best of the major house standard non-vintage cuvées that you can enjoy for a lavish moment, but you can also drink it casually with some friends. That being said, if you bring out the Bollinger and it's just a get-together, they might think you're showing off, but if they have an equal appreciation of champagne, they would appreciate that gesture as well. As for the value, I would have wanted to have included this champagne in our guide to the best champagnes under $50, which only takes into account champagnes that are easy to find in most convenience stores or online, and in the end ends up being mostly from the larger houses. But unfortunately for Bollinger, you're looking at about $59 to $65 if you buy it online. I personally paid €39, which comes to $47 in the current exchange rate. So there is a difference in prices between France and the USA. That has always been the case with champagne and most wines, but unfortunately it doesn't quite get under the $50 mark unless you're very lucky. Finally, we're going to discuss some pairing options, and this is something that isn't scored on the champagne sheet, but it's just something that we like to talk about, which gives you a better perception of what you can expect from this champagne. So firstly, this is indeed something that could go with caviar and foie gras. However, it wouldn't be my first choice for those two dishes, even though I've included them here. I'd probably go with something that isn't quite as acidic, yes, but not quite as dry, perhaps. You might want a touch of sweetness, especially with the foie gras. Oysters, though, absolutely fine, and maybe countryside pâté, that would be a good choice as well. When it comes to main courses, cured meat is certainly possible, but it would be better served with fish, pasta or pastries. Myself, I'll actually be finishing this bottle tonight with some homemade pizzas. I've prepared the dough and it's currently rising in the kitchen, and that is certainly a good recommendation because red wine and tomatoes tend to be mortal enemies. However, with champagne, it is a good way of getting around it because it's made with red wine grapes. They don't have the tannins because the skins haven't been pressed hard enough, which is why it has a golden color. So this is certainly a way of getting around the old tomato and red wine issue because it still retains some of the vinous character that you would certainly be able to pair with tomato. Otherwise, shellfish, vegetarian dishes, so this goes very well with grilled vegetables and white meat. In terms of cheeses, Pretty much any cheese is fine, but I wouldn't recommend it with blue cheese. Blue cheese would be best served with something that isn't quite as dry. Nevertheless, you could have hard cheeses such as Comté, Emmental, and Beaufort, but you could also go for soft cheeses like Brie, Camembert, some goat's cheese, and yew trees are also great options as well. Desserts are out because it's far too dry, but you could also, as I mentioned, it's not really a choice for me as an aperitif, but you could certainly enjoy it with things like French fries, breadsticks, nuts, olives, tapenade, and potato chips. These are all very good pairings. The saltiness and the acidity pair very nicely together. And finally, if you're a cigar smoker like we are at Bespoke Unit, consider perhaps a light or mild tobacco blend. I personally would consider something like a Plasencia Reserva Original, or you could maybe even go for a classic Davidoff No. 2. That would also be an excellent choice. That's all from me today. I hope you've enjoyed this video. If you have, give us a like, give us a subscribe, and leave a comment if you have any questions about Bollinger, or if you just want to tell me just how pretentious I am, which happens a lot, and I really don't mind. That's just the way it is, especially when I'm doing champagne reviews. Anyway, until the next video, why don't you head to bespokeunit.com and see all the other men's lifestyle subjects that we cover. I'm sure that there'll be something out there that you will enjoy. You can also head to the full written review of this champagne and learn more about it, as well as read the Bespoke Unit Champagne Sheet. Until next time, take care.